Hi everyone, and welcome to Jane Talks Murder, where I'll be talking about and reviewing an episode of Poirot, Murder, She Wrote, Diagnosis Murder, or Jonathan Creek. Today, I'm looking at Murder, She Wrote, Hit, Run, and Homicide, or as I like to call it, that time Jessica went for a joyride. We begin the episode with Jess cycling along. Look at her flappy bits go! And I bet that population will go down this episode. I'm surprised I don't have someone constantly repainting that sign. Or maybe they did and that person got murdered. This guy Daniel bumbles along on his bike, not looking where he's going, so of course he ends up crashing into Jess, who asks what his problem is, and he shows her his invention, essentially a giant Fitbit, but it doesn't work very well. Jess invites him to the Founders Day picnic where she'll be giving a speech, but he says he'll be too busy with a house guest. At the picnic, there is a lot of gingham as Jessica practices her speech, but a yell is heard as some dude tries to outrun a speeding car and ends up on the bonnet before it drives away, with Ethan claiming there was no one behind the wheel. But Amos thinks he's been drinking. Charles says he's in town visiting Daniel, who used to work for him, but couldn't find him, so he headed for the picnic, and he too claims the car had no driver. Jessica brings pie and meets Katie, Daniel's house guest, and Tony and Leslie, who are also here and apparently getting married, but they have to go. After Daniel talks about nothing relevant for a while, Jessica tells him about Charles's accident, but he's furious that Charles has invited himself over and storms off. Some rando named Dean comes in by boat and walks the mile towards the hospital to see Charles, but en route, the driverless car stalks him and he screams into the camera. Ethan reports Dean's death to Jessica and says Amos is in over his head, so she rides to the station to give him some pointers. Amos appreciates the help and they both go back to see Charles, who is confused why Daniel told Jessica that he didn't even know either of them were coming. She goes back to Daniel and says she thinks a driverless car is a bit far-fetched, and Katie delivers her next line like she's on low battery.
No, I remember those designs.
Jess questions why Charles would claim Daniel called him before she gives a big old middle finger to GDPR.
I know it's confidential information, but you're going to have to trust me. I need to know those phone numbers.
She rushes over to Daniel's and tells Katie about the outgoing calls to Boston, and she says one was Tony and one was Charles. And Daniel got angry when he got fired, but insists he's not capable of murder. Daniel wants to show Jess his latest invention, a way to scare bugs off his flowers, but it attracts doggies. I'll take one in every colour. That night, Ethan recounts their day's events, searching for the car, and Jessica suggests a place to search, but Amos has a go at her, saying it's a waste of time and money, so she goes looking by herself where someone mirrors her in the face. She does find the car, but a truck sneaks up as she gets in, which takes her for a ride. Screw this.
Wasn't that Jessica Fletcher driving?
Best extras ever. The runaway car passes Ethan, who goes after it, and as it speeds towards the cliff, the van causes it to brake before taking off.
And you wonder why I don't drive a car.
Amos thinks Daniel is to blame as the designs found in the car belong to him, so takes him in for questioning, and Leslie thinks Daniel may have lost his marbles. But quiet darling, let's make out. Jess and Katie go for a walk through the woods talking about Charles's company being in trouble, and Daniel thinks he may be losing it, which Jess says is crap. Tony rescues Jess, who has a flat tire, and she tells him Daniel isn't nuts, as they stop for some gas, and Jess noses in the car, finding something about Leslie's car rental. Oh, Daniel's been released and goes somewhere with Tony, and now Jessica is at the grocery store where she finds Ethan playing an arcade game and not listening to her theory about the van before trying the game for herself and getting an epiphany. All the characters gather together as the van rolls up, causing the car to go speeding after Charles again. Run, Amos! And Leslie rushes to the van, but it's actually Ethan operating it this time. Jessica accuses Leslie of lying about her job, and she blames everything on Charles. Dramatic house zoom. Jess says Charles got Leslie to run him down to create an alibi before getting her to kill Dean and blame it on Daniel to get all the wealth from the company. And Daniel tells Katie he loves her. Okay, you can tell this is an early season 1 episode because the editing is garbage. The scenes are all over the place with aggressive cuts, making it impossible to tell how much time has passed, and Jessica seemed to teleport all over the place. I chose this episode because I remember the self-driving car, and I needed to revisit that because it's wonderfully random, but this episode is a bit of a hot mess. It was kind of obvious that Charles was in on it, but what was with Leslie? Like, who was she? I know she was Tony's fiancée, but why would she help Charles? Like, what was their connection? What did she gain from her part in the plan? And who rolled up in the van at the end when there was no one in it or in the car? I think this is one of those episodes that revolve around a novel idea, in this case the driverless car, but the rest of the plot became secondary to the point that logic fell by the wayside. There were clues pointing to Leslie. They talked a lot about her having to go out of town to work, but the dots don't really connect because she had no established motive, and I don't understand why she was getting married to Tony in the first place if she was going to throw it all away by being a big old murderer. The acting was a little lackluster throughout, and there were too many loose threads to be a decent episode, so all in all, not a success. We have one victim, Dean Merrill, who was run down by a driverless car so that Charles could profit from the company's wealth, thanks to our killer, Leslie Andler, who did it for no discernible reason. So there you have it. That was Hit, Run and Homicide. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, or come say hi on social media. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit that like button, it really does mean a lot, or consider subscribing if you want to keep investigating with me. Alternatively, feel free to check out my other YouTube channels. Thank you so much for watching, I'll speak to you soon, and keep an eye out for clues.